The DA in the city of Tshwane has laid criminal charges against SAMWU members for participating in a strike which is deemed unlawful against the municipality. The charges have been brought following serious allegations of sabotage and conspiracy to kidnap. The party says it was alerted by a whistleblower that union members were conspiring to kidnap the mayor's wife in a bid to have their demands met. Workers have also downed tools after the city's failure to implement a wage increase. The DA Tshwane Caucus spokesperson Kwena Moloto joins us now. Kwena, good to have you on the program this afternoon. Can you provide an overview of the criminal charges that the DA in Tshwane has laid against members of SAMWU who are participating in what's called an unlawful strike here?
Yes, so just for clarity, on Friday, yesterday, we did at Brooklyn police station lay criminal charges against SAMWU for sabotage, incitement of violence, conspiracy to assault, and conspiracy to kidnap. Now, this was as a result of a concerned SAMWU member who came forward to us as a whistleblower to inform us of the existence of a Telegram WhatsApp group that was being used, amongst other things, to coordinate sabotage of municipal infrastructure. There was mention made of an assault on the city manager, as well as suggestion that they kidnapped the executive mayor's wife. Now, we as the DA Caucus take these allegations very, very seriously, and these threats very, very seriously, given the context we find ourselves in. As we speak here today, there's a city employee that is lying in hospital after being shot by strikers after refusing to put down his tools. And so we went to Brooklyn SAPS. We appreciate them going through all the evidence. We've released all the evidence to Brooklyn SAPS as well as to the media. And we're essentially just calling on SAMWU to show responsible leadership. It's clear that this strike has degenerated into criminality, and it's not what's best for SAMWU members, and it's not what's best for residents of the city of Tshwane.
But Kwena, what specific allegations and actual actions led to these charges, including these charges of conspiracy to kidnap and the intent to cause grievous bodily harm here?
It was all in the screenshots, as I said, that have been released to the press and handed over to the Brooklyn police station and SAPS. They make mention, as I said, of in regards to trying to figure out how best to ensure that the city caves to their demands. Essentially listed various actions that could be taken. At an event that the city manager was at, a picture was posted, and there was a suggestion, as I said, to assault the city manager. Luckily, that wasn't followed through on, but it has continued. There's been mention of taking out members of the DA Caucus, specifically our DA Caucus chairperson, Jackie Ace. And so we, as I said, take these allegations very, very seriously, given the fact that just last weekend, a member of SAMWU, as it's now been found out, was shot for refusing to put down his tools.
Let's speak about the urgency of addressing these threats. I mean, the urgency of addressing the threats has been highlighted in your statement. Could you explain why the DA believes it's so crucial for law enforcement to swiftly examine the evidence and to respond to ensure the safety of citizens and municipal employees here?
No, it's important above all else that we need to protect life. And when not just, the members of the city, but just residents in general, lives are at risk, it's extremely important that action is taken. As I said, for us, the most important thing is that, as I said, looking at just last weekend, there's a clear indication that strikers are willing to go as far as shooting people in order to ensure that the city caves. And so for us, any mention of kidnapping, any mention of committing grievous bodily harm has to be taken seriously.
But what measures do you believe should be taken to also prevent further violence and disruption during the strike?
I think from our side, we're very clear that there's a local government bargaining council where we have submitted an application to request that we don't pay the salary increases, because the reality is that the city of Tshwane doesn't have the finances. We can't afford the extra 600 million per annum that this would add to our wage bill. And so what we're asking of SAMWU leadership is to use the proper platform. This should be fought inside the local government bargaining council, and not inside the streets. And so I say we call for someone to show responsible leadership. There's a man that's lying in hospital that was left for dead. And we need to not just for the safety of municipal workers, but also just for the livelihoods of residents. We need to move past this strike.
Kwena, let's expand our conversation a bit and speak about the aspect of balancing workers' needs and the city's own priorities. I mean, you mentioned the desire for salary increases among SAMWU members, but how does the DA-led administration there balance the legitimate concerns of workers for better compensation with the overall needs of the city and its residents?
I think that's what our executive mayor is essentially attempting to do. The reality is that we wish we could be a city that could pay for the salary increases. But the reality is that we just simply can't. We know after the illegal administration in 2020 that took our budget from a surplus of 400 million to a negative 4 billion, that the city has been in a dire financial state. And we've made it clear that the reality is that if we were to increase salaries and pay that extra 600 million, we would have to lay off workers, and it would have major impacts on funds. That those funds should be going towards service delivery. We need to together rebuild the city, and it's why we call on SAMWU to join us at the table to negotiate. Because the reality is if you try and draw water from a rock, know what is coming out, and we just simply can't afford the 600 million that these requests would cost us.
But what would these negotiations look like, or what alternatives or negotiation channels do you even suggest for SAMWU to address their concerns without actually resorting to this illegal strike or these disruptions that we are seeing here?
So the first would be the local government bargaining council. That's where wage disputes are handled. And that is sitting next week, and we're requesting that SAMWU leadership come and present their case there, just as the city will. If either party is unhappy with the result of the local government bargaining council, then they're more than welcome to approach the courts. But there is due process, and we believe that's what should be followed first. You know, to take to the streets before following due process. Inside my mind, and I think in most of the residents in Tshwane mind, was a step too soon.
Now, there's also another element regarding the consequences of violent behavior. I mean, acts of violence and sabotage have been associated with this illegal strike. How do you believe such behavior impacts the image of the labor movement and the reputation of SAMWU?
No, I think terribly. I think the reality is that this strike has painted SAMWU with a brush of criminality. There's been assault of multiple officials. There's been destruction to property, attempts to burn down municipal depots. And as I said, the most tragic being a worker that was unwilling to put down his tools, who was shot and left for dead. I think that SAMWU really did make a miscalculation here. Because I think inside the eyes of the public, they are in the wrong.
And in the same breath, I mean, how does the DA view the responsibility of labor unions in maintaining a peaceful and legal means of addressing grievances?
It's extremely important, and I think it's important to dispel also the notion that SAMWU's been trying to push that the DA is anti-union. We're pro-union, we are pro-workers, and we're just trying to rebuild the city in a manner that works for our workers and works for our residents. The most important thing at the moment is to ensure the financial stability of the city. And I believe that, the problem is that a culture has been created inside this country where often the first step that unions take is violence. And equally so, the problem is that local government has allowed themselves to be intimidated. And as the DA, we're saying that we refuse. We refuse to allow this to continue. We have to work together to rebuild the city, and we have to take our citizens and take our citizens first.
And speaking about taking the citizens first, I mean, the DA emphasizes the importance of prioritizing the well-being of both SAMWU members and the City of Tshwane. Could you elaborate a bit further on these potential long-term consequences if these disruptions do indeed continue?
I mean, look, if the violence continues and the destruction to property continues, it just keeps taking us a step back in terms of our financial recovery plan, which has been being implemented by City of Tshwane. The longer that, and I think a big part of it as well is that you must remember that we need investment in the city. We need to make the city an investor-friendly city so that there are jobs and we need to grow the economy, and a big part of that is having a city that functions. And so the long-term impacts of the strike, which has been going on for almost 4 weeks now, which is almost unheard of in the city of Tshwane, has the potential to have major long-term impacts. And as I said, we call on some leadership to communicate to their members. We have no issue with strikes, but allow strikes to be legal and ensure that they're not destructive. Because at the end of the day, whether this ends next week, whether this ends in 2 weeks, we'll have to take hands and rebuild the city together. Let's make sure that there's actually something left to inherit.
The DA's Kwena Moloto, of course, conveying their message to SAMWU's leadership. Of course, as this dispute continues, and this long-standing dispute as SAMWU workers call for increased wages.